This shows us that even when we keep our sins secret, even when they're not known to anybody else, they're still sins before God. They displease God. In fact, that's what makes something sin, is that it's first against God. And so if we see coveting the same way, coveting is against God. Coveting is a sin against our God. Now, how is it? When we're coveting something, we're not appreciating and showing gratitude for the things that we already have. It's like taking the blessings that God is already giving to me and casting them aside for the ones that he's giving to someone else. It's not appreciating the blessings that God has already given to us. So who here has ever driven through a neighborhood that's not yours, a neighborhood that you couldn't afford to live in, just to look at the houses? I have. Sometimes it's fun. Sometimes it's like a game to walk or drive around and look at the size of the windows and the landscaping and how much property they have. Or that one has a brick sidewalk with a fountain in front of it. That's crazy. And then you make your guess about, I wonder how much this one costs. And you check yourself on Zillow. It's fun. Have you ever played that game too seriously? Have you ever let it impact you when you drive back to your own house? And there you start to covet what's not yours. You see your own house as less of a blessing and more of a burden. Instead of seeing it provide shelter for you and your family, you see the siding that's peeling off the house after the storm. You see the spider web of cracks in the driveway, a driveway that seems to be sinking about an inch every year. Even though these thoughts are just in my own mind, nobody else knows about them, this coveting thought is still sin before God, because it's not showing appreciation for the things that he's already given to me. So we know that it's sin against God, but let's look at where it lies, where this commandment lies within the Ten Commandments, and how it's unique. Because oftentimes the Ten Commandments are just very general, plain statements. For example, you shall not commit adultery. End of sentence. That's the commandment. General statement. Or another one, you shall not have any gods before me. General statement. End of it. Sometimes they start off general and then become more specific. For example, the fifth commandment says, honor your father and mother so that you may live long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. Starts off general, becomes more specific. Coveting is different. It does the opposite. It starts off specific and then becomes more general. With this in mind, let's read it again. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or male or female servant, or ox, or donkey, and then it becomes general, or anything that is your neighbor's. So why would it be structured this way? Why is it different? Here's how I take it. Most of the other 10 commandments are action-based. They're things that if you break, the people around you can testify that you did. Your neighbors can say, hey, he was bowing down to idols, or he was working on the Sabbath. But coveting isn't action-based, but it's thought-based. And it's something that other people can't really monitor for us. It's something that we have to monitor ourselves. So when God starts out with all these specific things, it kind of jumpstarts our minds to think, are you jealous of your neighbor's success, of his possessions, of his family? It jumpstarts our minds to think, am I coveting? Am I thinking this way? And it's in the second half of the Ten Commandments, so we know the first half of the Ten Commandments are often about how we love God directly. The second half are about how we love our neighbors well. Because God wasn't just making his people to be righteous individuals, he wanted them to live well in community. And so this is in the second half, and God knows that it's a sin against not just him, coveting is a sin against our neighbors. In fact, if we look at the details of this commandment, we see you have to be within pretty close proximity to break this commandment. You have to know somebody pretty well. So if we look at these examples, if you covet somebody's house, you're at least near their house. If you're coveting, it talks about their servants, you might have been in their house, been waited on by their servants. In our community today, if you're jealous of someone's family, how they're loved by their family, you might be a friend of theirs. This is close proximity so we can covet. But God issues out this warning because he knows that coveting kills community. Coveting kills community. And often we think, well, it's not that bad. Like if I just keep it to myself. Yeah, of course I'm going to notice how her husband talks to her and maybe what he bought her and wish mine did the same. Or if you're a student living at home, I'm going to compare the rules that my parents have for me and how much more independent my friends seem to be. But if we keep those thoughts to ourselves, will it lead us to appreciate those who are in our lives, appreciate our community? No. It'll lead us to neglect those around us, to compare them, to say, why can't you be like so-and-so? It's this idea that often one sin leads to another and another, and so often they start in our minds, just like coveting. Talking about this same process, this cycle, James writes in chapter 1, verse 15, after desire has conceived, desire is the same word for coveting. After desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. It's this example of one sin leads to another, and it all starts in our minds.